What, you have a podcast?
Really?
Computer, show the historical documents.
It's just time for a theocratic monarchy. King Trump, for life. Let's go.
I said, no, Sean, I'm going to be a dictator. I said that.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Recovery from Politics Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Frame, and today is Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. This last weekend, we saw a bunch of protests against the Israeli government's actions in Gaza, the West Bank, that kind of thing. It was a very pro-Palestinian solidarity march. There were a few unfortunate chants. Congress is really easy on this one. I hate their guts. So, just to be clear, I've said before, from the river to the sea might have had some humble beginnings, might have been something innocuous and peaceful or whatever the hell, but it has been co-opted by terrorists, and it kind of means the elimination of Israel, the country, and if you take that to its conclusion, Jews as a people there. So I don't use it, but I do think it was interesting that Congress is so ridiculously dumb, especially the Democrats, that they fall for this nonsense put on by the Republicans. Remember, the Republican Party actually does have anti-Semites in it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, chief among them. I don't know whether or not Trump really is, but he certainly trucks with a lot of sayings and whatnot. So he probably is. Hello. Shai is saying hello to everyone. Yes. Okay, pause. Oh, no, we don't want to be held. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, the issue that I had wasn't with the protests. The protests blocked some traffic, they inconvenienced some people. Several people were arrested by police for various things, sometimes, not doing much at all, sometimes, pretty egregious. Most of those charges will be dropped. That usually ends up happening. The court system and police sometimes round up people in an effort to disperse what could potentially become a powder keg. And the courts give a lot of leeway to that. They say, yes, the cops can do this, but no serious charges are ever brought, and the people are usually, gavelled out. Is it annoying? Yes. Do I wish the cops wouldn't do that? Of course, but it's the world we live in. But anyway, my problem with the protests over the weekend was not the protests, but the reaction to them. Many on social media, prominent individuals, a lot of articles, Washington Post, New York Times, everywhere is saying, these protests that block traffic and ruin, they're just inconveniencing people's lives. They don't do anything. They don't accomplish anything. Nothing has changed. Therefore, they are useless. Now, first off, I have hated for a long time the idea that someone else gets to decide how people get to protest. I don't care for it. I understand public safety and all that BS, but I really don't care for it because they're not allowed to take a knee. They're not allowed to just not go to the national anthem. They're not allowed to speak their mind. I mean, athletes especially, they can't take a knee during the national anthem. If they miss the national anthem, all of a sudden their governor is saying that we're going to end their scholarships. They're not allowed to talk about politics from the podium of their sports thing because, hey, you're an athlete, you stick to sports. I hate that because it's like, you do realize, if I was in government, if I was a member of government, I would try to remind all these reactionaries, if you don't let the people protest peacefully, you may not like it, but they're not hurting anyone physically by doing whatever they're doing. If you don't let them do this, it will escalate. Okay? It's just the nature of what happens. Martin Luther King knew this. And of course, everybody points to him. He's the number one greatest protester in American history. Him and Malcolm X are like right there. They had different means, but it worked. And, they did point out that a riot is what happens when you silence a people for so long that they feel like, yeah, this makes sense now. Nobody goes from peaceful, fun-loving, family-friendly, suburban dad to, I'm going to burn down the goddamn warehouse. That doesn't happen immediately. That happens over a series of years, decades, lifetimes, where that person has been conditioned to know, I am being oppressed, an injustice has been done against me, And I will see no sign of justice in the current system. And they know that implicitly. But they're a powder keg. This has got to come out somehow. So that's when the riot happens. Riots are not psyops. They're not CIA plants. Riots only happen because the people have been pushed too far by someone. So right here, you got all these people saying they can't protest this way, they can't protest that way, they can't use a saying, they can't march and say from the river to the sea, because you got even people like me saying, well, look, you can say pro-Palestine, anti-Israel all day long, but really that one unfortunately has been taken. I'm sorry about that. Go ask people who used to like the swastika. It was taken. It was disfigured, malformed into the current thing it is, which is a symbol of hate. That saying is an anti-Semitic saying now. I don't think you can reverse that. At least I've never seen a system or a situation where that has been reversed. But we're saying they can't say a certain thing. We're saying they can't protest. On October 8th, I was of the opinion that, yeah, the DSA going out for a pro-Palestinian march on October 8th was bad politics. I would never say they don't have a right to do it. I'd say, look, the optics suck. Maybe wait a week. But the whole idea that, we keep boxing people in. We say, you can't do this. You can't do it this way. You can't inconvenience people. You can't do anything. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, historically, what happens to a protest where nothing happens? No one is inconvenienced. Does the news even cover it? I mean, really, does the news even cover it? The news barely covered a pro-right-wing Nazi rally in Tennessee a few months ago. No one covered it. Why? Well, they didn't break anything. They didn't block any traffic. It might have gotten a word just for the fact that it was Nazis. But what happens the next time there's a Nazi rally in a right-wing state or right-wing city? And nothing happens. Nothing breaks. Nothing. Will they report it? Or is that just going to be, oh, that's the norm now? And when that happens, I guarantee you those neo-Nazis are going to start upping their game because they want to be noticed. They want to be heard. Same thing with these people here. And I'm not, it's strictly a comparison. I'm not conflating the two. I'm not doing any of that. But, you have the pro-Palestinian marches over the weekend. They had to block traffic to be seen, to be heard. There were news reports. There was social media. I mean, even these people who are arguing you blocking traffic doesn't do anything, it doesn't accomplish anything. It's like, well, motherfucker, we're talking about it. Like, you wrote a whole article on it. I'm doing a whole podcast on it. So apparently it does something, right? So we did get attention. Attention was raised. Awareness was brought forward. People now know there are protests. If they didn't block any traffic, imagine you're a Palestinian. Maybe you're lucky you're not in the inner city. You're far away. You're a suburb. You're on a farm. You're isolated from your people, which is fine. That was your choice. But you're feeling a little more isolated because, after all, your people are under attack over in Israel. There's nothing you can do. You don't feel seen, felt, heard. Nobody's reaching out to you. Maybe you're not on social media. But then, over the weekend, you saw, hey, there are thousands of Americans protesting. They're blocking traffic. For me. Even though I'm not in immediate danger. You don't think that has an effect? You don't think that's worthwhile? We're letting the Palestinians here know that we are on their side, that there is somebody here with them? Because if they hadn't blocked traffic, if nothing had been done, the media is not going to cover a boring protest where no one is offended, no one is inconvenienced. And if there aren't at least 1 million people in the streets, the United States our media is not designed to give a shit. And then you're that Palestinian sitting there and you're like, yeah, I'm in America. Nobody does anything. And it's not your fault. You don't know that nothing is being done or that there are things being done because the media is not reporting it. Or if they do report it, it's on the 8th page of the newspaper that you don't get because nobody does that anymore. So the idea that these protests should be done peacefully, should be done, a way to not inconvenience anyone, to not disrupt anything. If they did that, they wouldn't have been covered. Somebody out there wouldn't know there were protests going on. But there's another element to this that I really want to bring up, and it's like, everyone remembers Martin Luther King Jr. as this genius protester, and all the peaceful marches. Like, they love to talk about the peaceful marches. He did it peacefully, and look what he got accomplished. No, that is not the lesson from Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew damn well there were two things that were going to drive the moderate white American who didn't give two shits and didn't even realize it was a problem because in their own bubble it wasn't. There were only two things. One, the television. He understood it, and he knew when primetime was. So he scheduled all his marches and protests when people were watching TV anyway. But then, that's not enough. See, one of the reasons he wanted the peaceful protest, the reason he wanted to march peacefully, and I'll bring it to today. Kyle Rittenhouse did not shoot two protesters. He didn't kill protesters. He killed rioters. That's how the media covered it. If even one person in your protest breaks a window, lights a car on fire, knocks over a fucking trash can, suddenly any violence against the group is justified because the media will do it. Our media is spoon-fed by the police. Watch your local news station. What's the first story they always lead with? Something that happened. A crime, a bank robbery, an armed robbery gone wrong. Somebody was killed. Why? Because the police will always have their PR guy telling you what happened that day. It's easy to report. You have a quote, you have a camera, you got a person on film saying, this is what happened. Someone was killed. Well, guess what happens when it's a protest that gets a little uncomfortable? Potential rioters, at worst. Potential is thrown in front. Otherwise, there were rioters. We were there to prevent a riot. The rioters did this. The rioters did that. Rioter. Suddenly, it's no longer protests. It's rioters. Even though most of us on the left and some on the right who can think this way, like, realize all you need are a few bad apples amongst your entire group and the whole group gets labeled that way. Especially in a protest, then all of a sudden a protest becomes a mob, becomes a riot. They were violent. Not there was a violent guy in the middle of it. They were violent. Kyle Rittenhouse did not kill two protesters. Per the media, he killed two rioters. And he was justified, and he is a saint on the right. He won't be allowed into the military because he's too fucking stupid. But he did not go to prison. The jurors felt sympathy towards him. After all, he had to face down rioters. So Martin Luther King Jr. knew this 60 years ago. That if any member of the march that he was leading did anything, broke a window, knocked over a mailbox, a trash can, anything, then the entire group would be labeled as violent. And suddenly those police actions with the dogs and the batons and the fire hoses wouldn't seem excessive. They would seem necessary. Because just like back then, they had police department PR people who would go to the media and they would drive it. It would be, there were rioters. They were unruly. They were illegally doing this. They were breaking and entering. They were committing crimes. They were criminals. And when you attach those words to a group of people, suddenly anything that happens to them is A-okay. It's justified. And instead of talking about the overreach, instead of talking about the issue, we're arguing with each other because you've got half of us who believe the police were justified and the other half who believe ACAB. Well, then what the hell was the issue even about? Martin Luther King Jr. knew this. He knew we need to be peaceful. It has to be a peaceful march. Has to. Because also, we're putting ourselves out there. We're going to do this during prime time. So if we're not peaceful, everyone's going to see it. And again, he wasn't trying to reach the hard right. You're not. There was MAGA back then, just like there's MAGA today. They're unreachable. But the moderate middle, those squishy libs, the kind of socially conscious conservatives, if there is such a thing, those people will see it. And you have to give them a perfect, clean slate. Innocents versus oppressors. Because I guarantee you, no matter how big the march was, no matter how great his speech is, if Martin Luther King Jr. did all his peaceful marches, even during prime time, and the cops didn't lift a finger, if not a single video of someone's skull being crushed, if the fire hoses weren't turned on, if the dogs weren't sicked on them, if the cops did nothing, most Americans wouldn't have given two shits. In fact, I guarantee you the argument would be, I don't know what the big deal is. They're talking about police brutality, but I didn't see any. What are they complaining about? Everything's great right now. The economy's moving. They have jobs. I don't know what the big deal is. Right? Like that's built into it. If there was no reaction to all those peaceful marches, Martin Luther King would have accomplished absolutely nothing. His goal was to demonstrate to the squishy middle America, it doesn't matter how peaceful we are being attacked. And I can bring it to your living room right now because we will peacefully assemble. We will peacefully protest. We will peacefully march down this street. We have permits and everything. And that way, when you see the cops overreact, the reaction was the protest. That's the key. The reaction is the protest. If there is no reaction, what the hell's the point? I'll give you a clue right here. Million Woman March happened the day after the inauguration in 2017. What did that accomplish? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We got some cool hats. That was about it. Nothing happened. Nothing changed. Trump didn't come to his senses. The Republican Party didn't all of a sudden, hey, we got to take care of this guy. No, nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. All those idiots in Charlottesville marching, saying Jews will not replace us. All those idiots. If they didn't say Jews will not replace us, do you think they get covered? Do you think if it wasn't just a bunch of white men with tiki torches, if they were marching peacefully, if they were singing the national anthem, do you think that it would have been covered? They said something to get covered. They purposefully chose something, a powder keg, to go to get covered. And again, it's the reaction. You may not understand it, but it's there. What did the right want to do in Charlottesville? The right wanted to show the rest of its ranks that there was a solid movement. Hey, look, we can all gather together here and do a march, and we can show our solidarity. And because we said inflammatory things is not the point. The message was, look at what we can do when we group together. Look what we can accomplish. Hello. That's Indy. They don't want to be on camera today. Okay. So it's about the reaction. So right now, you've got these protests. They happened over the weekend. What's the reaction? Well, first off, we're talking about it. That's always good. But unfortunately, the majority of the discourse is talking about how they protested. Oh, I can't believe that. They inconvenienced those poor people who are just trying to get to work or trying to go to a birthday party or something. True. But what's the appropriate way? That's always the fun thing. What's the appropriate way? And you know what? Most of them all say vote. Yes, because that fucking worked, right? The Supreme Court totally listens to elections. I voted for Trump, I voted for Biden in 2020. Guess what? The court still undid Roe v. Wade. Nothing changed. They're still about to go ahead and grant that the January 6th people weren't actually trying to obstruct Congress. Because there's no precedent of that happening before. So, Oh no, trust me, it's going to be 6-3 reverse. They're all going to be let out. It's going to be great. Biden didn't fix that. So you can't tell me voting is an option. Some people don't believe in voting. I'm certainly having second thoughts on it. It doesn't seem to fix anything. I voted for Biden because I thought he would be a steady hand on the foreign policy wheel. Well, he fucked up Afghanistan. Ukraine's getting left out in the dust, and Israel's a shit show. Yeah, my vote accomplished something, sure. Not to mention, we have an electoral college that effectively has nullified my vote in both states I've lived in. Washington State was solidly blue. My vote literally didn't matter. Alabama, this shit's not going blue in my lifetime. Okay, I can vote any way I want. It will have absolutely no bearing on the presidential election. Yeah, telling me to vote's perfect. And you know what? The amazing thing is, there's at least 42 states that are not in debate. They're not up for question. So you tell people in 42 states in this country, your response to what Joe Biden is allowing to happen in Israel is to vote. And oh, by the way, vote for Joe Biden. Just to be clear, we should vote for him. Who's making it worse? Sorry, that doesn't count. It doesn't work. It really doesn't. Voting doesn't change anything here. The majority of Americans believe in climate change. Majority of Americans believe police go too far. Majority of Americans believe Congress shouldn't have insider information and be able to own stock or trade stocks based on it. Guess what? Doesn't change anything. So I find the entire idea of, instead of protesting and blocking somebody's traffic, you should vote. Fuck you! When was the last time your vote changed something? Didn't change anything in 2000. Didn't change anything in 2004, 2008, 2012, 16, 20, and it's not going to change anything this time. No matter who wins the presidential election, Palestinians will be fucked. That is the God's honest truth. It just depends whether or not they get lube. That's it. That's the only difference between Biden and Trump when it comes to the fate of the Palestinian people. And yet you're going to tell these same Palestinian people and the people who support them over the weekend and tried to protest, you should vote. For which one? I mean, they're both bad options. And again, your choice is, do you want to be fucked with lube or without? But I guess, the whole point of this is I keep screaming into the void, you idiots don't understand. I get it. There are certain protests I don't understand. I don't get the throwing paint or soup at a work of art. I don't get it. I'm usually the artist is long dead, has zero bearing on the current conversation. Why would you destroy a Michelangelo painting over climate change? Did the painting do that? Did Michelangelo say anything about that? Why? Do the owners of the museum do it? There is no connection there for me. And it's we want to bring attention. And it's okay. That one I don't get. Especially, you could argue at least it's bringing attention to something, but usually in that case, the insanity of the protest itself kind of overlooks anything else they have to say. What are you doing? For example, there were protests over the weekend, same topic, but it was a bunch of people going into a Starbucks with a blowhorn, and they were protesting there. And I'm okay. It's a random Starbucks. Okay. There are minimum wage workers behind the counter and a bunch of people just trying to have coffee inside. I really don't know what your point is. You've overshadowed your protest. Is it bringing attention? Yeah, but to be fair, the video I saw was 2 people. I don't get that. a group of people. Now it's like, dude, get your friends, block somewhere that has some meaning. Like, I get the blocking the bridges, I get the blocking the highways. You want to create something large enough to get media attention. The only reason the Starbucks thing got attention was because they themselves filmed it and then put it on social media. But that doesn't count. That's not real protest. Real protest is getting the mechanism, the system, the group to pay attention to you. That's not happening when you're going to just random Starbucks. Like, I don't know. That one, I'm willing to be open to it. Again, I'm not anti-protest. I'm not anti-inconveniencing people to get your protest across. Like, go ahead, do that. But, like, some of them do make me wonder. What was your point? Is it just, I want attention? Okay. Who are you trying to get attention from? Because, again, in most of these small places, the museums, the Starbucks, the In-N-Out places, like, those only have filming and footage because you are the one doing it. So what's the difference between you and one of those idiots who goes into, like, Target and starts ripping down all the, like, LGBTQ stands? Like, they're filming themselves doing that. You're filming yourself doing that. Like, that's where I kind of put them at. And again, I'm not anti that. It's like, okay, I get you want to put your thing, you want to get your message across, and this is a way to do that. You're trying to disrupt someone's life. But again, it's like, these can be coordinated. At least with the blocking of the roads and the bridges, like, you could see there was a national effort and coordination going on there. Okay, it wasn't one group, it was several. You know, there was some talk, there was some discussion. The group came together and said, how can we be the most effective? I know, let's do this. And it worked. But again, the point is the reaction. So, what was the point of this weekend? Okay, the majority of us, we're talking about it. That's always good. Sure. Pro-Palestinians. You know, fuck Hamas. Yes, I condemn Hamas. Shit. You know, Palestinian freedom, absolutely. Israel's committing a genocide. They're going too far. Okay, next. Senator Tom Cotton went ahead and posted that random people should go out of their way and commit violence upon people who are blocking the road. A sitting senator is advocating violence against protesters who inconvenience you. President Trump is on the record and also has several people who have testified that he wants to sic the military on protesters he doesn't like. It's being normalized. Eventually, someone is going to protest by blocking a road, and a car is going to drive right through them. Or there will be a counter-protest where they come armed, and they gun them down. Or Trump gets his way and he uses the military against average American citizens. Again, it's not the protest. It's the response. It's the overreach. Okay? Fascism doesn't happen all at once. We think it does. Trump's in! Fascism! No, it's going to take him a few days. He already spent 4 years kind of greasing the wheels for it. We're already here for it. There's problems on both, the problems on both sides of the protest. Tom Cotton saying for violence. Trump wanting to use the military against protesters. Cops standing behind Trump. The Supreme Court is going to go ahead and say what the January 6th people did was nothing wrong. Little by little, they are normalizing these actions until one day, very soon, I imagine, it'll cross over the line. The state, or MAGA, will overreach. And that's when you'll see the change. You will see the change when that happens. So all these people complaining about the protests now and what are you accomplishing and everything else, I would caution you, it is not a sprint, it is a marathon. Right now, we have to normalize protests. That's the goal of the protesters. They're not hoping that the government overreaches. They want to normalize protests. They want to let everyone know, I stand with the Palestinian people. Here are all my friends with me. And next time they protest, I stand with the Palestinian people. Here are all my friends with me. Here are all their friends with them. And so on and so forth, until eventually it bubbles up over time. to where they don't need to block the highway because finally they have the magic number of 1 million people marching in the streets that the cameras will naturally turn to them. And all of a sudden, people will realize, oh, if they're willing to march, they are willing to vote. That's the whole problem with telling people to punt to voting. That means your actions are hypothetical until November. And then we see the reaction, and then we see the reaction of the politicians from that reaction. It's all hypothetical. Protesting shows your intent. This is my issue. It's my issue so much I'm giving up a Saturday for it. I intend on voting this issue. And you keep getting the news out there so that there are people, squishes in the middle. We're like, I don't know if it's that big of a deal, what's going on in Israel. You know, it doesn't affect me. I don't personally feel any problems. And yeah, maybe they're not the one inconvenienced by traffic. Maybe they're reading about it in the paper the next day. But they realize, oh, there are other people who also feel so strongly about this that they're giving up a Saturday for it. They're risking arrest for it. They're risking one of those car drivers just saying, fuck it, and running him over. It's the small, careful changes over time. It's the same thing with Bernie Sanders, and all of a sudden socialism's a good thing. Or kind of. Less bad than it used to be, right? Bernie ran, everyone mocked him, and then all of a sudden, there's a large portion of the Democratic Party that is actually pro-socialism. Without Bernie running, that doesn't happen. That wouldn't have happened if all of us had voted Hillary. If Hillary was elected, Bernie would have been tossed aside. If Bernie didn't get out there and push his message. Sometimes the message isn't about winning. Sometimes the message just, hey, here's the message. Get out there. Anyway, I'm talking in circles now. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.